Future Shay coming in. So I filmed this a couple weeks ago after my second watch of Weapons. This is a video that you don't actually have to sit and watch. You can just play in the background and just like podcast style. It's just me talking about all the things I liked, all the things that I was able to figure out, things that my friend was able to clue in, and I'm finally getting around to actually posting it. So this is a video that you can just play in the background. You don't need to actually sit and watch. It's just all the connections I made. It is going to be filled with spoilers, but I just wanted to add in this update. So I hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching. Hey, it's Shay. I'm back from my second screening of Weapons, and just to preface that this is going to be in no particular order from start to finish, but it's going to be filled with spoilers. If I can figure out how to link my spoiler-free short, it's as spoiler-free as you possibly can ever get. So just forewarning, this is going to be a video that I'm going to jump all over the place as I think of things, and just questions that I've had answered, things I was able to figure out. So this is going to be filled with spoilers, just as a forewarning. So let's begin. One of the first things that I really like when you watch a movie a second time is, and I usually recommend people watching movies at least twice. That is especially the case for this film. I actually found it funnier my second watch than the first, just because you know when people are going to be hurt, you know when there were going to be the things that jumped out at you, like the scene where he's in the bathroom and his aunt is sleeping, and he opens the door and he pans up her body and you see her face. I jumped the first watch, but I knew what was going to happen. And actually I found that there weren't any, at least from what I noticed, there weren't really any jump scares in the typical, where in most jump scares it's something that comes out, but you didn't really see that. I actually found it funnier my second watch compared to the first. And I was talking to a manager friend that I've made at one of the theaters here, and he is someone that I've seen come to when I saw F1, he came out and did this trivia thing, and he's a big fan. He is someone that he has opinions about movies and points of view, and he is a lot more critical of movies than I am. And when I was chatting with him about seeing Weapons, he saw it and he said it was meh, which I recommend to people take with a grain of salt, simply because the elements that I really liked about this movie, he didn't like. Like, for example, the police officer and the junkie, he said, take out the humor, and what point did they have in the movie? They could have gone with anyone else. Same with when I mentioned while they were in the house and they were attacking, and he says, well, you could use anyone. And I started really thinking about that, and I was talking to my friend about it, and after watching it the second time, they actually play really, really critical roles, especially with luring the teacher into the house, Justine. I was talking to my friend, and she was saying, well, the whole reason why she went into the house is because she knew him and was concerned enough to follow him. Otherwise, I don't think she would have gone into the house. As well as when the junkie guy is attacking Archer, have Paul, I believe, he's the cop. He grabbed his gun and first off shot him in the throat. He was still going, and then she shot him in the head and he was gone. Well, had the cop not been in there, she would not have been able to get this gun to then kill the junkie. And my friend was saying, well, like when it was the junkie and the police officer, he knocked him out in one hit, whereas you have the father, Archer, who's is being attacked by the junkie, and he keeps punching him over and over and over again. And and he keeps getting up until he gets shot in the head. So they play really, in my opinion, pivotal roles as apart from the comedic effect. I thought that they played a great role in things, especially the junkie. He was super goofy and wacky. So the runs, how they're targeted like weapons. My friend that they're on their way to, I don't know if many people get this, they might get at least the reference, but the way they were running, I was saying that almost were doing the Naruto run with their arms behind them. It was just something funny that I had noticed. A couple things with her car being painted with the witch, we theorized that it was Archer. He's the one that actually painted witch on the car. That was one thing. Another thing is, why would you run out of the house when you have someone kicking at your door? Why would you run outside? Like, someone could easily come in and sneak into the house behind you. Like, it just common sense and being aware of your surroundings, and it's just, yeah. Oh, one thing that I wasn't able to find too much on when I was Googling it, but the tree that the aunt had, she's in the room at one point and she's got, 4 candles, and it looks like I don't know, that this tree is a shrine. And I don't know if anyone else noticed, but she was taking a branch off and taking the rosebuds off, and I'm not too sure what she did with that stick. One thing that I was thinking about that we weren't able to come see online was, so when Alex is in the room, the parents are trying to break down the door, he sees the tree with the stick. There was stuff on that stick, because I was saying I thought it was the principal's like ribbon from the school, and the kids are tied to the school and they're under her spell. So that's why when he broke the branch, the kids ran after. But I was thinking, well, there's other kids that are at this school, so I don't think it has to do with that. But I know when the kids, I mean, people could tell me if this makes sense, but my theory is that she still had part of the branch from when she sent the kids out to the forest when the detectives were coming in to actually do a walkthrough. That still had classmates' hair on it because she collected that after she had ripped up their nameplates in class. So I don't know if he knew that was the classmates. Maybe he did. I did see stuff on it, and we can't find anything on Google and anyone else asking that question. So I'm very curious if this theory makes sense. And I was talking to my friend, and I was saying, well, when the stick broke, why is it that Archer, Bully's dad, Daniel maybe, he snaps out and he comes to, whereas the parents and the kids are just kind of like zombies. They're not. And through what I've read online, some people are thinking she might be very vampire-like. My friend and I were talking before we had read that after the first movie, and I was saying, we wonder if she had gotten the parents, and that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough, whatever, for her. So she needed the vitality of the kids, and the whole reason why she didn't change Alex is because she needed him. She needed to use him to get the kids. Another thing people were talking about that they noticed, well, I noticed this, I don't know if other people did, but the weapons in the O, you have a triangle, and on her little bell you have a triangle and a 6. And someone was talking online about how there's 6 stories, and I didn't realize that, but that makes sense. Another thing people were talking, actually my friend and I were talking about how she says consumption, and that is something from the pioneer days, the 1800s. And consumption eventually changed to tuberculosis. So I was talking to my friend about how she would have gotten attached to this family with her saying that she is the aunt. Well, through Googling, I saw that, or read that she is actually Alex's great aunt. She isn't his mom's sister like I thought. It would be a great aunt. I'm not too sure how she got connected. I don't know if it was necessarily random. I know that she could just say she's this long lost aunt, but I'm not too sure how she would have been able to reach out. The mom said that they know her, they haven't seen her in 15 years. So I'm not too sure about that. Another thing that we notice is that Justine's and Archer's dad, Archer, their dreams were very similar. Of Archer, who's watching his kid run off like a weapon, and you have Justine, who's thinking about seeing the classroom. One thing that I noticed, I'm thinking about it now, is that when she walked into the classroom, all the heads were down. Oh, wait, never mind. I kind of answered my own thought. One thing that we noticed, one thing that my friend was commenting on, is when Gladys shows up at the principal's house and she's out of breath. I ran across town and can I get a glass of water? She's super weak. And then the husband lets her in, and the principal's like, no, don't let her in. And as soon as she walks in, I mean, she goes from this really frail old lady to, oh, look at this house, and oh, look at the animals, and oh, look at this. They walk into the kitchen, and one thing that I noticed the second watch is, so we were talking about how she cut the husband's hair, but how did she get the principal? I noticed the second watch that she had seen the ribbons in his office. So that was, I had initially thought, okay, well, he handed her the bowl, that is his bowl, and he's handing it to her with the water. But she had gotten the ribbons, and she ended up tying it around the stick, and then surprised the husband by cutting his hair. And so when they're in the kitchen, she's like, can I get some water in a bowl? And one thing I was thinking about is I noticed this movie drops so many Easter eggs and so many hints and little things like that. Super interesting. And I noticed the second watch, on the TV when they were watching, it's about ants and cordyceps. And there is something called a zombie mushroom. And essentially when ants or bugs eat it, their brain ends up is zombified, and they march, they get, for whatever reason, their brain ends up directing them to go off somewhere that's ideal, and then the mushrooms sprout out of the head. So that was playing on the TV, so I was like, oh, that's super interesting. One thing that we could not figure out is what this black stuff was that he threw up on his husband's face. Why the black stuff in, like, why specifically? Why was it different? And from what I've read, it has nothing to do with it being a different spell or something like that. It's solely because of the stress of the children, stress of what's going on with the husband. All of that was stress, darkness, and that caused him to throw up, and that's why he wasn't throwing up at any other point. So that was super interesting. I know she and I were talking about the junkie, and she said, well, he was he was heading to the police station. I said, I don't think so, because on the phone call, he was saying he doesn't really like police stations. And is there any way someone could come out and meet him and get the money? And I think he was just completely lost. And, you know, he was on a mission. So thought that was super interesting. One thing that I didn't see is after Justine, she fell asleep in the car. We don't see anything about what happens between when she wakes up and she gets to the gas station. Maybe she went straight there. I don't know. The other thing was when Justine ended up looking into the house and knocking stuff over, as well as when, really blank on is the junkie guy, when he breaks in the house. You don't see anything from like the inside of the house. So I thought that was really, really interesting. It was also really interesting seeing and knowing what happens with Alex. And we were trying to figure out timelines in this movie. And we were thinking, I didn't notice this, and I did not recall, but my friend said, well, when they were at that meeting, they said it's already been a month. And the parents would have been under the zombie effect for much longer. So maybe they were zombified for a month, and, you know, the aunt kept just sucking their life force, but it wasn't enough. So she ended up needing to get the kids. There were also a lot of cans that he ended up cleaning up in the house when the detectives came, with the, you know, the kids that ended up, you know, heading off into the woods. I thought that Archer was actually going to run the principal over. I was not expecting in the first watch that someone else was going to just take him fully out. Another thing I noticed that my friend was saying, well, people online are talking about D6, and the 6 being symbolic and triangle and all of that. And I was saying, well, on top of Archer's house, see 217 and then a gun. When I watched it first, I thought, oh, a gun. And then it dawned on me, weapon. So there was a clue. And I noticed that when he walks into his room, into his son's room, the time on the clock is missing. So I thought that was super interesting. You don't see, which I wondered why, you don't see what happens to the cop or the junkie. It would have been nice to be able to see it, but I know it's not super relevant to the story. So I know that one of the big questions is the ending. What happened? I was saying, well, like, Archer's snapped out of it, but like the kids didn't, and the adults didn't, like I was saying earlier. And from what we Googled, the theory is that this witch, she sucks the life force, and these kids, and she also absorbs the trauma that these kids are going through. And Archer had only just been zombified, so he was still very himself. Whereas the kids and the parents, you know, they're alive, but like the parents, they're dead, but they are alive. And, you know, the kids just started talking again, and it's just, the spell was broken. Because I was saying to my friend, I said, well, why didn't he throw the sticks in the water? And she said, well, when the witch died, that was the same thing. And I was saying, well, I realized, well, you probably actually didn't even see, because when she dropped it in water, he was so focused on his dad and what was going on. I don't even think he registered that she had thrown the sticks in the water. I don't think he was paying attention. So the spell was broken, but because their life force had been taken so much of, they're never able to return to their normal state. They're never going to go back. Another thing that people have talked about is that, like, who's talking. And when I watched it the first time, I said, well, it sounds like Alex. And my friend said, well, I said, it's a bit weird that he's talking in the third person, but, you know, he even says Alex went and lived with an aunt, a nice aunt. And I think it's one of those, yes, he's talking in the third person, but it's one of those, he's telling this story about this town, and it is Alex, but he's not saying it is. You know, there's people that when they talk about stories, they talk about the story and they leave out that it involves them. Another thing that my friend was talking about from what she had read is that in the 18th, 19th century, bells, I guess, people that she may have been someone that died, and there was something to do with bells and death. And there, I get maybe a grave bell, and that is why that bell carries power, that she refuses to rest. Yeah, this movie was a great movie. I would love to see more about Gladys. I would absolutely love to see origin story. You know, was she actually the great aunt? Because my friend was saying, well, if the mom is dead, this person could say anything, and she's from another town, so it's one of those things. Maybe she's moved from town to town. I'm not too sure. So that, you know, kind of leaves things unanswered. I thought on the map, when he had drawn the lines, I thought the house that they crossed was actually going to be Alex's house, but it wasn't. Another thing, I still don't understand it. Alex. But yeah, those are my ramblings. I've been rambling more or less for almost half an hour about this. I know it's longer. It's all over the place. I tried pausing when I started trailing off because I just could not think of the next thing. But thank you so much for watching up till now, if you have. And until the next one. Thanks so much. So Gladys says there's soup, feed your parents, which he does. Doesn't do the best, but he does. She says you'll get more tomorrow. How did he get the money? I know this is unrelated, but how did he get the money? You know, he's a kid and he's in the grocery store and he's buying soup. Why at no point did any adult ask him, hey, what's going on? What's going on? I just, that was something that I, like, where were the adults? I don't know. And the other thing is with Gladys saying, hey, you know, we're going to leave tomorrow. If that stick that Alex grabbed was one that had the kid's hair on it, was she going to leave the kids in the house, or was she going to send them off to the woods and just let them starve and let them die? I just don't know. I don't know. It's very interesting. I don't know. One thing I did read is essentially this movie is a reimagined version of The Witch. And like fairy tales. So one article I was reading was saying, you know, it's like a Pied Piper-esque, which was something I was kind of theorizing, where, you know, it's a classic fairy tale or folk tale where kids get lost, they go into the woods, they get lost, and they end up with a witch. And, you know, these kids end up running off through the woods, essentially, and heading into the house. And, yeah, it's really, really interesting how yeah, I'm rambling. Another thing I read is that this movie symbolizes parents dealing with addiction and alcoholism, and the witch being very much playing the role of how addiction works and how things can snap, triggers can happen, and just very, very interesting. It's not actually based on a true story. I know that they say that, but I don't know anything else. I'm kind of rambling, classic ADHD, where I'm jumping all over the place. I think that's everything that I can think of. I may be missing things. If anyone actually makes it through this video, I would love to get comments of things that I may have missed, connections other people may have made. I'd love to hear if you agree that it was actually in a way more enjoyable the second watch, because things were less shocking. I was actually able to see watch a lot of some of the gory stuff, except for the vegetable peeler on the face. I could not look at that. But yeah, I would love any comments, thoughts, if there's anything I missed, and if you really like it, I'd love it if you liked it, and you pass this on to someone.